without further ado, if I had just started TRT, these are the things that actually, that wouldn't make any sense because I wouldn't know shit about anything. If I could go back in time and give myself advice when I started TRT, these are the things that I wish someone had told me. And in no particular order or hierarchy, they would be as follows. Firstly, if you haven't already, get a competent provider who actually knows what they're doing. How do you find that? Well, you can read my TRT 101 book, and there is a page at the end with a list of people who are good. You can jump on the TRT and hormone optimization channel and work with one of those providers. Marek Health in the States are good. Primal Zone in Australia is good. Eden Clinic in the UK is good. Alphagenics in the UK is good. There's a bunch for you already. So the reason why that's important is that there are certain things in life that you can shop for on a budget, and some things are best left to compete on price. Interventional endocrinology, hormone replacement therapy, is not something to shop with a budget price in mind because you will get what you pay for, and what you pay for has the potential to do more harm than good. The issue, though, that people then need to consider is, well, what do you do after you start treatment? And the most important thing is listen to what your fucking provider told you to do. And if you're questioning them, then it means you should have got another provider. That will save the vast majority of issues. But assuming that you've already done that, adherence being number one, actually doing as you're fucking told, then the next thing to do, which a lot of people seem to skip, which does fall under the first category, is you need to get a follow-up comprehensive blood test somewhere between 8 to 16 weeks. And it can vary from person to person. It can vary from provider to provider. It can vary from protocol to protocol or depending on how your health is. But it's so important that you get that first blood check done. And so many people get their TRT prescription and mosey down through life and fuck off and do whatever they want and hope for the best. And it just doesn't work out because then you end up 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the line, seeing me in the process of trying to unfuck you from the mistakes that you made because you were ignorant. So make sure that you get that first comprehensive blood test done. And the reason why you need to do this is one, to see how you've responded to your dose, but two, to recognize that your starting dose is probably, it may be, but probably not going to be your end dose because your dose will likely need to be titrated based on your blood work and your symptoms, how you feel, and how you have objectively responded. Objective and subjective. That's very important. And what's also very important, which a good provider will do, is not just to measure your testosterone levels and free testosterone levels, but actually measure everything comprehensively. And if you'd like a list of what a comprehensive blood test looks like, Marek Health's basic blood panel is good. I've got a screenshot on my FAQ on my coaching page, which you can also view on the website. TRT 101 has it in there too. Or if you're in Australia, Sports BB4 Plus from iMedical is also good. They're all roughly the same thing. And what you want to do is check everything in concert, because if you are having side effects, which are important to assess and speak to your provider about, because they may be transient or they may be indicative of a larger problem or an unsolved larger problem. Believe it or not, testosterone is not the only thing that men need to be healthy, contrary to what seems to have become a popular belief. It's very important to look at everything in concert with understanding what your side effects are, because the blood work can give us an indication of what's going wrong. So, for example, if someone comes back with side effects from starting TRT that are estrogenic in nature, and they come back with an elevated HbA1c, elevated insulin resistance, and elevated triglycerides, then we would get a pretty damn fucking good indicator that they're too insulin resistant to tolerate the testosterone dose that they're putting in their body. Now, that's something that requires a whole holistic treatment, which may or may not involve diet, exercise, potentially metformin. All these different things can be spoken about with your provider. But it's extremely important to understand what the side effects are so that your provider knows what's going on, but then also understanding where they're coming from and how to treat it. And the people who cannot diagnose and work this out for you are strangers on the internet. The people who can work this out and diagnose it for you are the people who actually know your medical history and have experience in actually doing this day in, day out. That's very important. Now, from a mindset standpoint, this is the stuff that I didn't learn or know or even think about until I was years down the line, when I was maybe 2 years, probably a year and a half, 2 years into my treatment. kind of sitting there being like, well, I have the testosterone of who I thought would be a better version of myself, but I'm still lacking a whole bunch of the skills and character and mindset. And I'm still a lot more anxious than I'd like to be. And I have all these kind of learned fear programming, and I have all these maladaptive coping mechanisms that I haven't resolved that I would hope would get better when I had higher testosterone. And the problem with this is that when you intervene with testosterone replacement therapy, it's kind of like using a cheat code. You're able to give yourself a very high level of testosterone, but because you're not forced to earn that higher level of testosterone, you're still able to fuck around with all the maladaptive shit that you shouldn't be doing that you should have got under control by now, which you've chosen not to. Like me, for example, when I first started my treatment. And this is ultimately what is causing the remaining negative symptoms that you're having. If you're 2 or 3 years into TRT and you've still got problems and your testosterone level has been optimal for years, I would wager that the solution to the problem, the actual solution, isn't just to continue to up the dose and hope for the best. It's to actually fix all the deficits that occur in the 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week that you exist, that you're not just doing your 2 injections per week. That's probably a very small piece of the puzzle in terms of what your overall negative symptoms are. Because the problem with hypogonadal symptoms and low testosterone symptoms, they can still occur once you've got optimal testosterone levels if your diet, lifestyle, sleep, all these major pillars which people are walking over to pick up pennies are off. So I would not be hyper focusing on the perfect supplement protocol or the perfect, biohacking routine or the absolute perfect X amount of milligrams of whatever the fuck someone on YouTube sold you with an affiliate code. The massive things that you need to be looking at in conjunction with your TRT, kind of like if you bought a sports car, you now need to also get driving lessons. So the major things that you need to be looking at is how much exercise am I doing? What kind of foods am I putting in my body 80, 90% of the time? How much am I sleeping? What's my stress management like? What's my overall mindset like in terms of how I'm viewing the world, how I'm viewing myself? And ultimately, how am I progressing in terms of where I am now to becoming the guy who I want to be? And if you're sitting there being like, well, I want to be the kind of guy who's disciplined and the kind of guy who's got like a good in shape physique and the kind of guy who's healthy and energetic and doesn't have brain fog and speaks confidently and has good verbal acuity and all these things, but then you're living like a complete fucking moron degenerate, 6 days out of the week and just absolutely fucking around, then that's not going to eventuate or actually happen. And I think this is, it's put very bluntly and it's put very crudely. And it may sound patronizing, but this is a lot of what's going on because I think a lot of people are expecting the testosterone to solve problems that it cannot solve when it's fighting against a poor diet and lifestyle or overall mindset that's not actually congruent with what would achieve those levels naturally if you could. And I know I sound like a broken record for harping on about this, but this is the biggest factor. And the big issue that people need to get under control in terms of understanding how you heal from hypogonadism, because that's what this process is. It's a process of healing. And without it sounding too pacifying or esoteric or woo-woo, this is a process of healing trauma. And the T word gets thrown around all the time. It's very premature in its use. It's sprinkled everywhere, and everyone's diagnosed with trauma this, trauma that. But spending a majority of your life or the majority period of your adulthood in a hypergonadal state and dealing with the challenges that come with that, is that the most traumatic thing that someone can go through? No. But it's still something that has to be resolved and has to be healed from. And I think it's important to recognize this in terms of taking a step back and going, okay, I have skills that I need to learn, I have deficits I need to resolve, and I have maladaptive processes and maybe things about my identity and things about my thought processes that I don't like about myself. And that's okay. And we need to make room for that. And we need to go, these things are not going to resolve on its own. They're not going to heal overnight. And they're not going to magically morph into a completely different version of you just because you have higher testosterone levels. Not gonna happen. But what can happen is a recognition that you go, okay, well, the foundation that all that shit was built on, that I maladapted around, that has now been fixed. That has now objectively been cured. So what I can now do is I can go back and do all the shit that didn't used to work, and it now will. But I have to have the courage and the bravery and the resilience to show up to the gym or show up to MyFitnessPal or show up to whatever the fuck and say, hey, that thing that didn't work that I tried 10 times, I'm going to try it the 11th time and I'm going to have faith or I'm going to have confidence or I'm going to have trust in the process or whatever label you want to put on it, that this is actually going to work, but I have to follow through with that. And that's breaking conditioning, because if something didn't work for you 10 times, doing it the 11th time, it seems counterproductive. It seems like that's going to be a waste of time. It's going, well, I've learned from the last 10 times that, dieting doesn't work for me and progressive overload doesn't work for me and all this stuff doesn't work for me. I still feel like shit no matter what I do. But as the higher conscious being that embodies your body as the vessel that you live in, you have to override that and go, no, we made a change here. We fixed the foundation. We logically fixed a problem that was sabotaging and holding us back this entire time. But now we have to show up and actually try and actually follow through, because now you don't have an excuse for failure. And when people come to me and they go, oh, well, I'm still feeling like this and I'm still feeling like that and I still feel like this, I'm like, well, your blood work's perfect, so you're fucking up something. And that can be uncomfortable for people, but it can also be empowering. It depends on how you look at it. And I think that if you actually keep the word that you make to yourself and you actually start to build some momentum and make progression towards the person that you're wanting to be, and also the purpose that you're wanting to achieve in the world, that becomes addictive when the body is actually healthy and functioning properly, because overcoming challenge and overcoming adversity and actually doing things that you're proud of, this gets the dopamine firing, this gets the endorphins firing, this fires you up and makes you feel alive, because now you're actually making a difference, but it also feels good to drive the car that you're driving to make the difference. So the process feels good and the achievement actually feels like it's something meaningful, because you're not feeling so stressed out and shitty and tired and just wanting to escape and procrastinate and avoid the responsibilities that you have, because you actually feel okay now. But you also need to recognize that you didn't feel okay and that you weren't okay for a number of years. And it's going to take effort. If you took 10 or 12 years of not looking after yourself properly or dealing with not looking after yourself properly because your endocrine system was fucked, guess what? At 12 weeks or even 12 months, you're only going to be 10 or 20 or 30% down the line from where you were to where you want to be, because it takes time. Puberty takes time, transformation takes time, the body takes time, training takes time, nutrition takes time. All of these things take time and repetition. So to expect testosterone replacement therapy to work overnight to get the end result, it doesn't play into how endocrinology works. It doesn't play into how physiology works. It doesn't play into how psychology works. And it's also just completely removed from the realities of the world. So these are the things that I would go back and tell myself when I was younger, when I first started this, is find someone who knows what they're doing and actually fucking listen to them. Do the homework that you're given in terms of making sure that the treatment is right. Speak to them and communicate with them about the side effects or the issues that you're having with your treatment. And then once you get the foundation set, once everything is good, stop looking for supplements, stop looking for medication, stop looking for protocols, and do the work that you're not wanting to do to get the results that you're wanting to achieve.